Hi, in today's video I'm going to show you how to set up Retroarch on Ubuntu 20.04. Retroarch is a front end for emulators, game engines and media players. Basically it allows you to play old games on your computer. Now what I'm going to do is come across and show you the various ways you can install this on Ubuntu and the pros and cons of each method. Now if you come across to some of the documentation, you'll find that there's actually 3 ways to set this up on Ubuntu. You can either use Retroarch in the standard repository, you can use a PPA, or you can install a snap package. And there's actually a section that I can't find at the moment describing the pros and cons of different methods. And what I found is that if you use the PPA to install Retroarch, you then can't install cores through the actual application. Cores are the sort of emulators that allow you to play old games. Now if you install the PPA, what happens is you're supposed to install all the cores through your package manager, and I found that there were some missing, so I tried using the PPA, but then as I said, I found you couldn't update through the application, you couldn't install the cores through the application. The other method is using a snap package, and apparently there's some issues with that in that some cores don't work and the Vulkan game engine doesn't work. What I'm going to do is install this from the standard repository and show you some tweaks you need to change in your configuration files and in the application to allow you to download cores from within the application so that you can play old games. So first of all, what I'm going to do is come across to the terminal, and if I do an apt search Retroarch, basically I installed Retroarch, and this installed the Retroarch assets, which is a dependency. Now once I've done this, I'm going to come across and open Retroarch and show you some of the tweaks you actually need to get this working. So first of all, when you open up Retroarch, what you're going to need to do is come across to the online updater. So this is the online updater here, and what you want to do is run the updates for all of these, and this is going to download the latest overlays and update the database and stuff. Now, the other thing is that you need to actually come across into the settings to enable the core updater in the application so that you can download the cores. So we'll come across to the settings and the user interface. So we go to the settings, user interface, and then into the views. And what you want to do is come across down here. You'll see it says show where is it? Show core updater. So you need to enable this checkbox. Now, once you've done that and you sort of come across and you go to the online updater, you can run the core updater. And what will happen is you will see a list of all the cores you can download and install. Now, what will happen is at this stage, you'll come across and you'll click one of these, and it will say it's downloading, and then it does nothing, and it will say no cores, and you will have no cores listed in the application itself. As you see, when I sort of come across, I can select load core, and you can see I have the Sinclair Spectrum Spectrum fused core installed. And basically the issue is that the Ubuntu package looks for the cores in a different location. So if I come across here and have a look in my config Retroarch directory, put that with a long listing, a bit easy to see. Ah, bollocks. Sorry. Retroarch. Okay, so by default, Retroarch creates a directory in your config folder where it stores everything. And in here you'll see that there is a retroarch.cfg file, and that's the main configuration file for Retroarch. So what we're going to do is we're going to open that up here, and at the top of the directory, at the top of the file rather, what we're going to see is the libretro directory and libretro info path. And by default, these point to different locations on your system. They're actually something like user lib x86 Linux GNU or something. Now the problem is, because we're launching RetroArch as our user, and we're then trying to use the application to download the cores, and by default the directories that it's trying to download to are directories that you need to use sudo. You need to run with elevated permissions to install in that in those directories. So because we're running RetroArch as our user, it can't install the cores we're downloading from within the application to the default directories that Ubuntu has set up. So what we do is we change the libretro directory path to config RetroArch cores, and then we change the libretro info path to config RetroArch cores info. And once we've done that, we can come back across. We can basically restart RetroArch, and once we've done that, we'll be able to come into the section down here, go down to the online updater, the core updater, and we'll be able to select a core that we want to install. And when we press return, it's going to download it, and you'll see a little message in the bottom left hand side saying downloading, and then it will say extracting. Once it's done that, you can see here load core, and this will basically allow you to load the core that you've downloaded. And I said, if you don't change the config file, you'll basically have this issue where you try and download the core. It will say it's downloading, but then nothing happens. It doesn't extract, and it doesn't show up in the actual application. So what I'm going to do now is, after I've got this set up, is there's also a another thing that you need to have a look at. By default, there's a button which is by default screen lock or something, scroll lock, and that toggles game mode in RetroArch. And basically what that is there's in RetroArch there's a keyboard shortcut that allows you to toggle the input for RetroArch. So by default there's sort of hotkeys in RetroArch to pause the game and stuff, and these can interfere when you're actually trying to play a game. So you can actually toggle the settings to change it to a different key. So basically what it allows you to do is when you're playing a game, you can sort of like press F1 and it will come out the game, or P for pause, and what you need to do is you need to actually change the this button, because your keyboard might not have the scroll lock, and I think it may be in the user interface somewhere, but it's actually it will actually be in the should be somewhere in this configuration file. There should be a setting somewhere. Let me see. Print screen. Okay. So this is it. Input game focus toggle. So if you look through your configuration file, what you want to do is change this section to a shortcut key that is actually on your keyboard, because I said your keyboard may not have scroll lock. So what we're going to do is actually, after we've got this set up, we can actually scan the directory where our ROMs are. So what I've got is a directory called ROMs in my home directory, and in there I have some old Sinclair Spectrum games which have either a TAP or TZX file extension. So what we're going to need to do is actually scan this ROMs directory for it to pick up those games. So what we do is we come across to this scan directory section, and you just scroll down, so scan this directory. Now once we've done that, what will happen is you will actually see the games come up here. Now on the ZX Spectrum, I had a bit of issues trying to get this to work, because say there was two things. One, when I was actually launching the game, the keyboard wasn't working. And the second thing is that I wanted to get this set up with my game controller. So what I've got is a knockoff SNES game controller, which I got from Amazon, which I think was about, like, you know, $35 or whatever it is in UK, maybe shipping and import fees, and you may be able to find other ones, but this is the one I got. And basically what I wanted to do was be able to use the gamepad instead of the keyboard. So if I come across into one of these games, what I'm going to do is start it up, and what I'm going to do then is press F1 on the keyboard and show you the settings. So this is, if I come across to Hario Attack, and what I found is sometimes you'll click run and it will for some reason come back down to the bottom down here to info, and you've got to click run again. So it's actually launching up first time. So what I'm going to do is press F1 on the keyboard and come across down here to the controls. Now what I found is that if you're old as me, you'll remember that Sinclair Spectrum games either used the keyboard or the Kempton joystick, and in later years it'd be like the QuickShot 2, which was the daddy of the keyboard and the joysticks. So what we actually need to do is change the user device type from the default, which will be Retroarch, to Kempton joystick. And then what we're going to do is come down to the third user device type and change that to Sinclair keyboard. So what we did was we started the game, we pressed F1 and it brings up this menu. Okay. We then, let's see here, we then came down to the control section. Okay. We then, you can just use the right arrow here, and we set the user one device type to Kempton joystick, and again we set the user free device to the Sinclair keyboard. Once we've done that, we can F1 out of that, and now we're actually on the game. This allows us to choose whether we want to use the keyboard or the Kempton joystick, which will actually be mapped to our USB controller. So back in the day I used to use a keyboard until I bought a joystick, obviously, and I tried using a keyboard and wow, was it painful. So I would recommend using the Kempton joystick. So in this case what we're going to do is we press 2, and again, if you're having issues interacting with the game, remember there's this game mode thing. So if I press print source on my thing here, you can see game focus is on, and what this means is basically it will allow direct input from your keyboard into the game, and it will ignore the Retroarch hotkeys which may interfere with the game. So we toggled game mode on, and we've selected the Kempton joystick, and now what we're going to do is we'll select our player. So we'll select Knight, and then we'll press 0 to start the game. Now this is Hario Attack from about 1983, and you can see here I'm fire along. You've got to get these bats and stuff. I guess you come down here and you can go down this hole. And the turkey on the right is sort of showing your lifespan. And it's been a long time since I played this game, and I can't remember what you're supposed to do. So this is just basically me showing you the game's working, and the joystick and everything is working. So this is Attack. What I'm going to do is I'll come out of that and you need to turn game focus off, then I can press F1. So what I'll do now is I'll come out of that and I'll close this, and what I'll do is I'll come across and show you another game. So these are some old games that I used to play. Chucky Egg, Daley Thompson's Decathlon. Now this game was famous for destroying joysticks. I think I went through about 6 lots of joysticks playing Daley Thompson's Decathlon. You'd wrench them back and forth, and they'd eventually break, and got so bad that I actually ended up going to Radio Shack, or Tandy, it was back in the day, and buying all the bits and making my own joysticks, which was actually quite good fun. So Hario Attack is another game. Happened just after the Falklands War. Probably not very PC nowadays, but I haven't quite got this going, so I'm not going to show you that. Then we've got The Hobbit from 1982, Horace and the Spiders, and one of my favourites, which I'll show you, is Jetpack. So let's have a look at Jetpack. So I'm going to run it. And okay, so what we want to do is, first of all, we're going to set the game mode, game focus on. And we're going to press number 4 for the Kempton joystick, and then press number 5. And the object of this game is your little spaceman, and you've got to first of all build your rocket. Okay. Build a nose cone, and then you get fuel, and you've got to. Okay, we've got the fuel there, and you've got to come across and get all these goodies, and then once the fuel is full, you can then get in the rocket and launch to the next level. Basically, this had so what happens sometimes is you'll actually bump onto something and get knocked down. So all these different levels have different little things you have to shoot. So what I'm going to do is just come across and go to the next level. I think I need one more fuel after that. And you had different sort of things you had to kill in each level. So the first one was these sort of fireballs. Excuse me. And it would take off. And come back down again. And the next level was the balloons from memory. No, it's the fuzzy things. It's the fuzzy things, and then it's the balloons, and then you get spaceships. I think you get the idea, so I'll just come out of that. So I'll just do the game focus off and come out of that and close that content. So let's have another look at there's Jet Set Willy. You may remember Manic Miner, classic. Now Night Law was an interesting one. It was one of the first games ever to feature sort of 3D on the Spectrum. So on this one again, same deal. We're going to set the game mode, game focus. We're going to select the Kempton joystick, and then we're going to start the game. And let me start the game. Okay. And it was really weird because you'd have this little thing where you'd actually turn into a werewolf. You can see it changes from day to night, and I can't even actually remember how you jump over these walls and stuff. But you'll see in a second. There we go. He changes into a little wolf. And this is one of the first games that ever had sort of 3D graphics on the Spectrum with 3D blocks. And for the life of me, it being about 37 years since I've played this, I can't remember what you're supposed to do. But it was just interesting to show you the graphics, and this was one of the first games that ever had sort of 3D capabilities on the Spectrum. So I'll come out of that because honestly I can't remember how you play the game. You can see there I'm changing back into the wolf. So change the game focus mode to off and come across and close the content. And now let's have another look at some other games. The classic Manic Miner. And this is actually really difficult. You can see you've got to get the timing right. And you've got to wait for this guy to just move across where you can jump. And if you hit the underside of the bushes, they'll kill you as well. You've got to collect all the keys. And it actually is really difficult. See, there we go. Got to wait for him to go across. And there's actually no way to move when you're in mid-flow, and these blocks will disappear as you walk over them and collect the key. You've got to get the timing sort of about right. See? And then we get the old Monty Python style game over there, so change that and put that back into focus off and close that game. So I'm just going to come through and do another couple of games. There was Wolf and Underworld. I remember you had all these different people who made games like Ocean and Elite. Okay, again, press number 4 to set the kempton joystick. And see, I'm not interacting with it. There we go. Always a good idea to set game focus mode on, and then we can press 0 to start the game. Again, I can't remember what the hell you're supposed to do with these games. It's been so long, and I'll die instantly here. See? Little sword. Oh, and I died again. I'm going to back get mullered again. There we go. I'll turn that off and come across and quit that. Let's have a look at another game. Then we've got Underworld. Select the kempton joystick. Start the game. And I can't remember this at all. For the life of me, I can't remember this game at all. You can see how bad I am at this. So I'll quit that one because I'm terrible at that and it's just embarrassing. Game focus mode off, F1, and we can close the content. So let's just come across and show you some more games. So another one was Lunar Jetman. And this was the sequel to Jetpack. So again, 4, and we'll press 6 to start the game. It's the same sort of deal. You could do something like pick up bombs and drop them, but for the life of me, I can't remember. And you can see you've got these things here showing you where base is, and I think you used to be able to teleport or something. Bang! Got hit by an asteroid. So as I say, this was the sequel to Jetpack, which came out in 83, and I think this was a game in 83 as well. And obviously I need a lot more practice on this. I'll just come across and close that. Game focus mode off. Quit that. So the other game that I used to play a lot was, as I said, Hario Attack, but I'll just start it, but I am actually managed to get this working. So you enter a skill level, and I haven't managed to get the keyboard working with this. I think you got to use the... Okay, I've got to check the game mode, game focus, because the F6 key, I think it was F6 or something you had to do. Yeah, I can't even get the... I've obviously got to get the keyboard mapping right or something. I think... let's see if I can change the keyboard mode again. Focus mode off. Let me try the other version I've got. I'll give you a look at Dave Thompson's Decathlon as well. Hario Attack. The level. See if it works with this version. First one out of the way. I think it was F6. Focus on. Yeah, I can't even remember what the bloody keys were. But basically what it was is that you would like launch off this boat and you would be a Harrier jump jet and you'd have to go and destroy the enemy. And say this just came out after the couple of years after the Falkland War. So that's one I need to actually have a look at to get the keyboard mapping right. And of course, see if I can get Chucky Egg going. Okay, see what happens there is sometimes you click run and you go through it and it doesn't run, and then you click it again and it runs. Okay, so Chucky Egg, and I can't even see the... okay, press S to start. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and... Okay, and the keyboard's not actually working. The controller's not working on this one, so game focus off, and controls. We've got the controls set up, but it may be that you need to... you can see here, and some of them are actually got the keys mapped to particular keyboard keys, which obviously don't work in this particular game. So what I'll do is I'll just come across and see if I can just resume and use the keyboard. They all had funny keys. It wasn't universal set of keys that you had. But again, that's one I need to actually get the keys working on, and you know, you have to sort of search around per game and find what the keys are and sort of sometimes map the keys. I'll close this content and let's have another look at the Daily Thompson's Decathlon. So again, on this one, what we want to do is select the second option, the kempton interface, and we'll just put in AAA. See if I need game mode on. Okay. And basically what you'd have to do is batter the joystick and destroy it. And you can see there 12.86. So not great, but you know, been about 37 years since I've played this. And again, this is made by Ocean, which is one of the big companies back in the day. Okay, and then you've got the long jump and various other events. So I'm just going to stop this here. Again, focus off. Stop that. Okay, so that was basically how to sort of install some different games and how you need to set the Kempton joystick and the Sinclair keyboard as options for the games to work, because by default they won't. You get the game to load up, and there'll just be a keyboard. The keyboard won't work. You won't be able to interact with it. And again, basically, what I did was when you run the game, make sure game focus is off. Press F1 and come down into the controls. Set the user device, the user 1 device type to kempton joystick, and user 3 device type to the Sinclair keyboard. And once you've done that, you'll be able to use the keyboard to select the input device. So you need to enable the keyboard so that you can then use the keyboard to select the joystick. So again, this is Attic Attack. So let's do a wizard. Move the cursor, and as you can see, these mushrooms are poisonous. So literally, I can't remember what you're supposed to do in this game because it's been so long since I played it. But I just wanted to show you that this is working on with the joystick. Let me get the fuck out of it. So, game focus mode off, F1, and come across, close the content. The other thing I should mention is there is actually a option within Retroarch to enable recording, but I haven't been able to manage to get it to work. So I think it's in the settings. Is it in the settings? If you come down to the settings, recording, enable recording. And what I found is that you can enable the recording and you come back in and it's been toggled back off again. And the other weird thing is what you got to do is within the recording, supposedly you save the output file, output recording as, and you give it a name. So basically you'd pick this section and give it a name like retroarch.mkv, and you'd enable the output recording directory, which is, I think, specified. I think you can actually, let me come back across to here. There is a section, there is a section somewhere within here that allows you to specify the recording location, board, driver. Okay, yeah, recording output directory. So what I did was I set the recording output directory to videos, and I enabled recording in the output directory, save output, recording as. And what you're supposed to be able to do is actually come into the game and press F1, and you're supposed to get an option that says record, which will then sort of record the game, but I couldn't get that to work, so instead I'm using OBS Studio to record this. And basically, as I said, after you've scanned everything in, you'll have all your games here, and there may be some issues with actually mapping the keys to get it to work either on the keyboard or with your input device like your joystick or your SNES controller. And let me just come across, there are, when I just checked it before, I think it's World of Spectrum. What was I going to spell? World of Spectrum. and I think when I checked it earlier on today, it was actually down. But World of Spectrum is a place where you can get loads of old games. Archive.org, archives.org, MAME. There's a whole load of MAMEs on archive.org that you can actually download. I can't remember which one the gig. Unfortunately, most of them. See if it's this one. Most of these actually, yeah, maybe this one. No, there's another one. But basically, what happens is you download the torrent, and in that torrent it has a load of zip files, and in the zip files it has all the main the ROMs. There is a really good one, but it's about 40 gig, and it's a single zip file, and it contains a load of SNES games and stuff like that. So if you have a look on archive.org, you'll actually find that there are loads of old ROMs that you can download and then get working with Retroarch. But as I said, unfortunately, a lot of them are actually zip files that are about 40 or 50 gig in size, and you cannot just choose a single file from the torrent to download. You've got to download the whole 40 gig torrent and then unzip the 40 gig zip file to actually get all the games before you can play them. And I said, once you've done that, you can basically put them in your ROMs directory and scan the ROMs, install the core, and what you also have to do is in Retroarch you can actually specify which core should be used to play a particular game. So it's got a thing called core association. So as I come into here, you can say reset core association, and you can specify a different core to play the game with. And that's basically some of the steps you need to do to get Retroarch working on Ubuntu and some of the fixes. But let me just give you a quick recap. So first of all, what we did was, after installing Retroarch with search, so Arch, so we installed Retroarch, which installed the Retroarch assets. So sudo apt install Retroarch. That installed the game and the application and the assets. And once we've done that and got it installed, we had to come into the online updater and update all these. And then after we've done that, we had to come into the settings, the user interface, views, and we then made sure this show core updater was enabled. Once you've done that, what you need to do is you need to exit Retroarch by pressing escape, and then come across to the configuration file, which is across in config Retroarch. Okay, you can see Retroarch.cfg, and that's this file. I said by default, the two things you need to change here are the libretro directory and the libretro info path. And as I said, by default, these point to a location on the system that require elevated permissions to actually install the cores, and you won't be able to do that from within the game because it's running under your user account. And that's why we changed the path to the Retroarch cores and cores info file in our home directory, so that their permissions are under our current user, and this will then allow us to use the core updater from within Retroarch to manually install the cores. So let's say once we've done that, you can restart Retroarch and come into the online updater, you update the cores, and then when you come through and you select any of these, you'll see a little message in the bottom saying downloading, then it will say extracting. You can then come across to this section that says load cores, and you'll see the cores that you can actually load. So you can see here I've got the Sinclair Spectrum Spectrum Fuse core loaded. Again, once we've done that, we then had to scan the directory where our ROMs are stored, which in my case was a ROMs directory in my home folder. We scanned all those, and then they will appear here. Okay, so these are all the games. Just use Jetpack again for a. Let's have a look at Jet Set Willy, and came across and press return. Okay, and what you need to do with Jet Set Willy is you actually need to enter this code. God's sake, you'd think it would be okay. There we go. Primitive security measures. Okay. Yeah, that's right. I remember now. For some reason, Jet Set Willy didn't load. It just flashed on this K section. The game focus off and quit that one. Those content there. So I remember now that one didn't work. But let's try it with Jetpack. We run the game and we use the shortcut key that we've defined to toggle game focus. So game focus on, game focus off. Game focus off, we press F1. And again, we came down to the controls section and we had to set the user 1 device type to the Kempton joystick and the user 3 device to the Sinclair keyboard. Once we've done that, we can F1 out of that, and we can then press the shortcut key again to enable game focus. Once we've done that, again, we can then use the keyboard to select the joystick. So this is why you need to enable the keyboard and the Kempton joystick, so that you can actually select the Kempton joystick to use it. And again, we can then press F5 and kick off and die horribly. Okay, so this is not the best demo. I'm going to click the noise cone, drop it over there, and you get the idea. So I'll stop that there. Come out of that. And say this is the section where supposedly when you enable recording that the recording button should show up, but for some reason I couldn't get it to work. So I'll close that content. So that's getting Fuse set up on Retroarch on Ubuntu 20.04, and the 4 fixes that you need to do, which are 1, to enable the core updater within the UI, set the, let me come across. So remember, there's the 4 things we need to do is change the path for the libretro directory, the info path, and then the other thing was the shortcut key and the core updater. So show core updater. So you should see in your configuration file menu show core updater equals true, and the other option was actually setting the focus mode. Yeah, input game focus toggle, and again that's the thing that toggles the Retroarch hotkeys on and off, which can interfere with the game. So need to specify that set that to a key that's actually on your keyboard, because I say by default I think it's something like scroll lock, which you may not have on your keyboard unless you've got a big extended keyboard. So input game focus, toggle, two up here, libretto directory info path, and the core updater true. Okay, down here, section here. So whatever you enable in the Retroarch GUI will actually get written to this file. So you can either do it through the GUI, or you can just come across and do it through the text file, which may be a bit easier. But basically, those are the steps that I went through to get this working. There's lots of memes on ROMs on archive.org, World of Spectrum, and if you do a little search, I'm sure you can find some others. And basically, these are all games that I purchased back in the day, like 38 years ago. And obviously I don't still have the receipts, but I did buy all these games that I've got down here. Horace Goes Skiing was one of the early games from 1982. And as you can see, if I come across to open one of these games, you can see these are all in 4x3 format, and that's because in the 80s we didn't have peripheral vision. We only saw stuff in 4x3. Obviously I'm kidding, but we didn't get 16:9 until, was it late 90s or something? So back in the day, everything was 4x3 on our little TVs. You know, tiny graphics like this. The Night Laws 1984, and say the early Spectrum games started about 82, 83, 84. We had people like Elite, Underworld. Was it Underworld? Was that game? Ocean. Lots of other great companies making really good stuff. And I say, not all of these were sort of working. Saberwolf, that was another one. Did I play that? Yeah, I did play that one, well, rather badly. So game focus off. Post content. And these were just a couple of the games. And The Hobbit was a sort of adventure game. It's sort of a text-based adventure game. Have a look at that. Remember this? You're in a comfortable tunnel like a hall. Look. And I've got no idea how you what you do here. Okay, you see the wooden chair scandal, and I'll have to read up on what you do here. But it's been so long since I played it. Game focus off. But that's just a couple of games I thought I'd go through, and just press escape to quit that, and I'll come across back here. And again, I got a oh, not the fucking mic over. I got a Buffalo classic USB pad, and let me see if I can find a picture of my old was it the QuickShot 2 Turbo? I think that was the one. Yeah, those were the ones. I didn't have the one with the red. Let's see if we can. Yeah, that's the one. These are the ones with the auto fire. So these were great because they had the auto fire button. So you just have a little button to toggle on, and it would just put the fire in automatically instead of battering your buttons. And they say these ones had the button at the top and then the button at the front. Big, sturdy, robust things with suckers on them. and I think I destroyed about 3 or 4 of these beauties using Daley Thompson's Decathlon, which was renowned as a joystick destroying game, because you'd batter it back and forth to power up. I don't know if you can get any of these. You can probably still buy these. Looks like it's got a USB plug there, so you could probably sort of buy these and actually get them working with the old games. So that's the old joystick, and again, just come across to archive.org, Mess and Maim, I think it is. Okay, I think this is the one. Maybe no, it's the 2013. I think this is the one that's like 40 gig. Yeah, I think this is the one. Yeah, I think this is the torrent in here. I think this is the one that's basically an entire zip file that's like about 40 gig. Yeah, no, this is this is definitely the one. The MAME 0151 ROMs, and this is basically got a load of different games for SNES, Sega. I think maybe some Sinclair Spectrum, and that sort of thing. You can actually play it within the browser. You can play some of these things within the browser and some of these things, but you can just basically download the entire selection, stick it in your ROMs directory, scan it, and then you've got to associate the cores with the games. It should automatically kind of try and work out, if you're playing a SNES game, to use a SNES ROM, but you may have to faff about a bit to actually get it working. So this is what I'll be downloading later on for all those classic SNES games like Outrun and Striker, football game, and all the Mario games, of course, all the old classic Super Nintendo games, and not sure what the legality of this is. I mean, it may depend country by country, but you can actually, it's all up on the archive.org. There's old ROMs you can get for the Spectrum on World of Spectrum, which seem to be down at the moment. But basically, you can download all these, get them set up with Retroarch, and as I said, there are several several methods for installing Retroarch on Ubuntu. Basically, there's 3 methods. There's using the standard repository, there's using the PPA or the snap. And as I said, the issue that I came across was can't find the page, but basically on the libretro or the Retroarch sites, it actually tells you the pros and cons of the various methods, and using the PPA won't allow you to install the cores from within the application. You'll have to use the package manager, and I found that the Spectrum Fuse package wasn't there or something, or maybe I just didn't get the name right. So that's why I didn't use the PPA version, even though it gives you a more up-to-date version of Retroarch, is because according to the documentation, you've got to use your package manager to install all the cores instead of the application. And the issue with the Snap package is that apparently some cores don't work with the Snap package, and also the Vulkan game engine doesn't work. So that's the pros and cons of the different methods of setting up Retroarch on Ubuntu. And basically, as I said, I just use sudo apt install Retroarch. That installed everything, went through, updated. Again, we need to change the configuration file. You can just, after you just run the updaters, what you can do is just escape, come in, and then edit the configuration file, change the menu show core updater to true, change the paths here. This is the most important bit, because if you don't change the paths here, what will happen is you'll go to the core updater to install the cores, you'll press the button, It will say it's downloading and nothing will happen. And again, the reason for that is because the location specified is a location on the system that requires advanced elevated permissions to install stuff to, and because we're just running the game, as our regular user, it can't install cores to a location on the system that would require sudo to actually install the cores to. So that's why we specify this path here, which is the config Retroarch cores and Retroarch cores info. Once we've done that, and the other thing was the input game focus toggle, which is the keyboard shortcut that enables and disables the Retroarch hotkeys like pause and F1, and you want to be able to toggle those off because they may interfere with the actual gameplay. So once we've done all of that, and we've got our ROMs installed, scanned, we're all good to go. And say the only other thing is, where you're going to get stuff from, archive.org's a good place, but if you have a little search around for ROMs, I'm sure you'll be able to find them. And the old QuickShot 2 joystick, I don't remember them being black, being red. Maybe that's just a new one, or I didn't have the red one, but that's what I remember, the old black ones with the button on the top and here and the little toggle for the auto fire. So these are really great joysticks from back in the day. I'm sure these were all reproductions. Don't think they'll be knocking them out these days. But again, you can also use the Buffalo. Is that it? Yeah, classic USB gamepad. So that's probably a better bet for SNES games. So this works really, really well for SNES games like all the old Super Mario games, and let's say you can even get it to work with the Sinclair Spectrum games. So basically you've got the up and down arrows, and what I had to do in some of the games was actually map the keys to the arrows. And I think you actually can also have for a game that's cheats config. I think it's in config. I think you can actually have remaps. Yeah. There should be something there, but basically what happens is you can actually remap the keys, and I think that the configuration will show up in that location. And that's just some stuff I've come across about getting Retroarch working on Ubuntu. And the thing that actually had me stumped for a while was, one, setting the call locations, and two, setting Sinclair Spectrum games to use the Spectrum keyboard and the Kempton joystick. And once you've done that, you'll be all good to go, and you can get Retroarch working nicely on Ubuntu and install lots of old games to play. And again, you should be able to find loads of stuff on archive.org just by searching for MAME. And this is the really good one, MAME 0151 ROMs from 2013 by Jason Scott, I think it is. If we have a look here, I think it's, yeah, you can see that's it here. So you can see the size of the zip file. Can you actually view the contents of the zip file? Well, let's do that. And actually download the individual files. I'm not sure if it will. It seems to be chugging away here. But basically, you've got to download the torrent And okay, so we can view inside the zip file. Can we actually then download these zips? So if we view the contents of the zip, we may actually be able to come down and download the zips individually. So let's just have a look for like Ica. Yeah, that looks like it. So I think that's okay. There we go. So we can come inside the zip file and we don't actually have to download 40 gigs of stuff that we might not want. So let's have a look for Mario. Got Mario there. Let's have a look for Mario Kart. Mario Kart. Some of these may not be named for Mario. So the issue is that some of these may not be named correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'll try and see if that file I downloaded actually works. So C downloads D Striker, unzip Striker. Okay, so I'm not sure what that is. That doesn't look right. Okay, but basically, as you see, if you come across here, we can see you can go show all. And what I did was, if you want to download the torrent, click that, download it, view contents, took a second or two, but then we could see all the games here. But as I say, it's not very easy to identify what they are from the sort of naming convention, but you should be able to come down and download games individually. But I said it's going to be difficult to know what they are, so maybe better off just downloading the 40 gig torrent and then extracting everything. Stop that because it's chuntering a bit. So you're going to need, if you do download the zip file, you're going to need a lot of space and probably something with a bit of oomph to actually unzip the 40 gig zip file. So that's where you can get some old games from, and folders you might want to look at, and actually some of the instructions on setting up Retroarch on Ubuntu. And as I mentioned, I just used the version in the Ubuntu repository rather than the PPA, because I try and keep the amount of PPAs I'm using to a minimum. And also, as I said, the issue with the PPA seemed to be that you can't install the cores from within the application. You've got to use the package manager. So that's why I went with the regular Ubuntu version. And once you've made the changes in the configuration file, you'll be able to download the cores for the different game for the game engines, you know, whether it's a SNES, a Sega, a Spectrum, an Atari, a Commodore. Then it's just a matter of finding the games you actually want and hooking them up. There may be a bit of faffing about getting the keyboard, the controls mapped to your audio device and your input device, whether it's a joystick or a gamepad. So there may be a bit of faffing about getting stuff working, but as you can see, once we got it working, Retroarch, you just come in, open up Attack, and then once you get to this stage, remember you probably want to put game focus on, pull on the kempton joystick, and let's go for the surf. 0, and the game's going to load up. And you can get different weapons depending on which character you play. Well, not bad graphics for considering it's like 37 years ago. So I'll just stop that. Game focus off, F1. And I think you can actually do stuff like save the state of the game and add the favourites and different options down here. You can also add cheats. And back in the day, was it computer and video games monthly? Google. I think that was the computer and video games monthly. I think that was it weekly? I can't remember what the thing was, but the other is that it? Computer and video games. That might be the one. Yeah, that's what I used to read. And the other one was Crash, and these used to have all the cheats for the games, which would usually involve pressing loads of buttons at various times in the games. But computer and video games, and the other one was Crash. Crash. Find it. Crash. Game. That's it. Crash ZX Spectrum. This is 87, but I think it actually went back to the early 80s. Are those some of the magazines we used to have back in the day of all the cheats and tips and tricks? So that's what you can do to get Retroarch set up, where to get the games, and how to get it all working.